right, let's live. Hello, potheads, and welcome to episode 7 of Gear Wizard TV, where we have our first guest. She will be joining us shortly. But first, let me introduce my little buddy, JD.
Thank you, Wizard. As always, I am happy to be here. How you been?
Pretty good. Pretty
Pretty.
good. It's been
You thought I was gonna ask what you were smoking, but I
I
didn't.
did.
I
I was
know.
expecting. You threw me for a loop.
I did. Well, I'm glad you're good. What are you smoking tonight?
What am I smoking tonight? GMO. GMO. From the same grower we had last week, Forbin's Finest. GMO, which actually has a little bit of garlic too, but it is mainly based on Girl Scout cookies. Although I don't think we're allowed to say that name anymore.
Did they sue?
Kinda, sorta, yeah.
Okay.
The Girl Scout said you can't do that anymore,
No.
like the Gorilla Glue people did to Gorilla Glue. But how are we smoking it?
How are we smoking the GMO? Wait, what?
In my teacup.
Oh, you're a sneaky one. Wait, but is there actually also tea in that teacup?
Yes, there is actually tea
That's cool.
in my
Just
teacup.
when you think you've seen it all.
And this is a custom made one. Uh, Handmade, hand fired. On the back here we have an elder sign from the works of H.P. Lovecraft and the Cthulhu mythos. So I also had her throw in a tentacle for the handle,
Nice.
which is really fun because now I inhale through one of the little sucker pieces on the tentacle.
Well, careful that you don't go completely mad and lose complete grasp of reality and
It's kind of
fall
the
into
point.
a void.
It's kind of the point. In the world today,
The elder
madness is
gods
a
are,
blessing.
yeah. H.P. Lovecraft. Still love him. Still love his stories. Wish I knew less about the man, but hey.
Not not a
Is it?
stellar individual, it turns out.
No, but it was, as they say, it was a different time, and he did die destitute on the street. So,
And,
you
and perhaps deservedly so.
perhaps, perhaps,
But oh, the stories he left us.
absolutely. And perhaps also had Prozac existed when he'd been alive, it might have done wonders for him.
What's your favorite Lovecraft?
Uh, you know, that's a hard one to answer because I have a hardbound. I have like a. It's this big. I have like a hardbound collection of everything that he's ever written, and so a lot of his stories just kind of bleed together in my mind.
They do. They do.
Yeah, and so it would be really kind of hard for me to uh, pick like a favorite. I'd have to sort of look at a table of contents and go from
I
there.
have one of the penguins from At the Mountains of Madness tattooed on my right leg.
Nice.
One of the giant 6 foot tall carnivorous
Yeah,
penguins.
and I'm still holding out hope that someday we'll get a movie because they've been trying for 20 or 30 years now.
Richard Stanley has gotten approval to do, I think he's going to do a 2 film version of the Dunwich Horror next.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Well, he's the guy that brought us The Color Out of Space.
Oh, that was really good. That was a really good one. Not
So yeah,
directly based on Lovecraft, I don't think, right?
no,
But
absolutely
very.
directly based.
Oh, it was okay.
Yes,
Oh, the color
very.
out of space was a Lovecraft story then.
It was.
Okay,
That is. Yeah, Richard Stanley is a bit of a Lovecraft scholar.
nice.
In addition to being a bit of a wizard of sorts, he's a follower of the ancient Cathar religion, and actually lives in their stronghold in Aquitania, which is part of France.
Are you just making up words?
No, it's a fascinating story. And I've had the privilege of smoking marijuana, excuse me, cannabis with Richard Stanley twice and just listening to him talk.
Wow.
And he's a fascinating man. Uh,
And he knows Nicolas Cage. I
he
think.
knows Nicolas Cage,
Yeah.
indeed. And has some stories about that, I'm sure, but I didn't get any Nick Cage stories,
I,
sadly.
I feel like anyone who spent 5 minutes with Nick Cage has like a Nick Cage story.
We can only hope.
I know. He's the best. So I have to ask, what kind of tea do you have in that cup?
Tonight I am drinking Bengal Spice from our friends at Celestial Seasonings. Sorry,
Celestial seasonings.
I drew a
Okay.
blank.
There was there
It
was a
must be the
long
weed.
there was a long pause there for like maybe the second biggest tea company in the world.
My database is very, very good, but the indexing is horrid. I never know where shit is stored.
Fair enough. Something that I can absolutely relate to as
No,
a
it's
an
embarrassing
ADHD
because I
man.
have no fewer than 20 boxes of Celestial Seasonings tea downstairs, and I have taken the company tour, the factory tour, often enough that I could probably lead it.
Well, then you should know the name,
I
but
should.
I won't judge you.
I tell you, if you ever get the chance, you want to go on the tour for the peppermint room.
Where is the Celestial Seasonings factory? I want to
Boulder,
say factory.
Colorado.
Okay. Is
Boulder,
factory the right word
Colorado.
here? Or
Yes,
tea
it is a
room?
factory
Okay.
because they, you know, mix the teas up and then box them, and they have the little
Okay.
robot that wraps them up. It's fascinating. I love production lines.
That robot is taking a job.
He's taking our
They're taking
jobs.
our jobs. On that note, speaking of jobs, should we bring in our guest who has a
Let's
job for
bring in
the?
our guest.
All right.
Gonna allow you to do the introductions.
Hello, Lydia. We have here Lydia Davis, cannabis ad. I'm sorry,
Hassan. That's okay.
Lydia Hassan, Nee Davis, cannabis advocate and industry veteran. Uh, I've known Lydia since.
Way too long. We don't have to.
A
We don't have to
few
say
names.
the number of years. It's
Yeah,
okay. We don't want to date ourselves. So
been a long time. Yeah, several presidents ago.
yes, I like that. I like
Many
that.
presidents ago. Yeah, back when presidents weren't. Sorry, a
Yeah,
week away from the election. It's
we could
very hard for
do
me
an
to
entire
talk
podcast
to.
around that.
Yeah, but we're not going to. We do this podcast
already
to try and
enough out
escape from that.
Yeah.
Yes. But anyways, yeah, we've got a cannabis industry veteran advocate here. Lydia, I know the wizard has some questions for you, so
Yeah,
take it
before
away.
we get started, we like to I guess I shouldn't say we like to because we're starting a tradition tonight.
Well, I'm honored. Thank you.
You are very
So,
welcome.
the first question, it may seem obvious, but I think as we discussed in our pre-show, it's not always obvious in this industry.
hmm
Do you use cannabis?
I do. I do. I was kind of late to the game with cannabis in terms of how people usually consume. I think I was probably a senior in high school the first time I consumed. I literally walked into a household, a house party that I forget who's. I think it was actually. Oh, you know what? I shouldn't name them, but Jason, JD knows exactly who I'm talking about.
Was it on Leicester Road?
It may have been.
Okay.
Yeah. I walked into a house party and I smelled someone smoking weed. And my immediate thought was, that's my dad's basement smells like all the time. And I was not putting two and two together that like that's what was going on. And a friend of mine was smoking a bong and tricked me into clearing a tube the first time ever I smoked weed. So
Tricked you.
I went from never having THC in my system to being violently high in like 5 minutes. So it was interesting. And then really, I mean, after high school, it was, a little bit. And then really like after my kids were born, there wasn't time for it. And it was really just probably 10 or 15 years ago that I was just like, okay, I have anxiety. I have a couple other issues. I was having trouble sleeping. And I started kind of, reading up on it and reading about the medical applications. It still wasn't legal around where I lived. So it was harder to come by. But when the industry popped off in 2018, I was just like, I need to be involved in this. And yeah, I've been a consumer ever since.
So that was kind of going to lead into my next question, which was why? Why do you personally use cannabis? And it sounds like
Yeah,
medicinal.
it started out like we were talking pre-show about neurodivergence, and for a long time I thought I had ADHD. That might still be true. I've had a assessment a couple years ago where I was told that I had ADHD. However, in that time, in March of 2023, I was diagnosed with a 5 centimeter brain tumor, a benign brain tumor, and had to have a craniotomy and have it removed at the end of that month. So now cannabis has kind of shifted. Like I said, luckily the brain tumor that I had was benign, but there is a chance that it could regrow. They're monitoring that constantly, but I am using RSO and doing an RSO regimen right now just to prevent the tumor from coming back, prevent regrowth.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. It's
Yeah.
kind of heavy.
Yeah.
Very just side note, as someone who followed your journey through all of that, it was harrowing. It was very harrowing.
Yeah. We went.
Very glad that you're here with us.
Yeah, not to go into a whole side quest on
Yeah.
it, but we, for 2 months, we had no idea what was going on. I was just sick every day, throwing up every day, sleeping 15 hours a day. We had no idea what was going on. And was openly asking for an MRI. And the doctors are like, you don't need it. It's a sinus infection. It's vertigo. It's this, it's that. And I was like, well, you gave me, antibiotics for my ear infection, which I thought it was, or a sinus infection, and nothing changed. So shouldn't I get an MRI? No, you don't need it. My husband literally walked into the doctor's office as this big tattooed guy stood there and said, I'm not leaving until you schedule my wife for an MRI now. Like it needs to happen. And 2 nurses came out and were like, oh, she doesn't really need it. He's like, no, I'm not leaving until you schedule her for it. So they scheduled it and it only took 5 minutes. They literally put me in the machine. And then I immediately came out and they were like, we need to take you to the hospital right now. So it was kind of like, it was right at the right time. It was 11 days later, I went into surgery. And I will say for anybody out there listening, if you have to have brain surgery, it's actually not the worst thing in the world. You have like no nerve endings in your brain. So I was expecting to wake up from surgery and be in a lot of pain, and you wake up and you're just numb. And obviously your head's all over the place as your brain is resetting, but really not that bad. I was very, very, very lucky. So yeah, just trying to prevent that in the future by being as healthy as I can. That was also, I stopped drinking completely at that time. So I'm coming up on 2 years, alcohol free, and relying on cannabis. And even with cannabis, I've cut my cannabis use back. It is my indulgence in the evening. And sometimes halfway through the day, I do find I work in sales. Sometimes you get too far into your own head in sales. It's not easy to talk to people. The conversation's not flowing. So I do find, and I had the benefit and like the huge privilege of being able to work from home. I can smoke 1 bowl and go, oh, okay, I'm back. Like, I'm,
Right.
it's like where we're trying to get away from these kind of things. I do find that cannabis has a different reaction to me than alcohol, which I had heard from recovering alcoholics who used cannabis still, was that it doesn't, it's not like I feel like I need it all the time. I know it's there, but there's no rush. Like it's just there and it's supportive of me. And I am an amateur herbalist. So that very much speaks to my herbalist training, that, you listen to the herbs and how they interact with your body, and the plants and how they interact with your body, food as well, and go with what feels best to you.
Absolutely. So next, what is your favorite piece of paraphernalia?
I'm going to be really boring here, but I have to say my bong. I really like a bong just because it really does open up the colas in the flower. You're actually able to taste it a lot more. It is kind of an instantaneous effect, which sometimes I'm just like, I know exactly what strain will do what to me. And this is what the headspace that I need to move to. And this is what I'm going to go with. But I do love a joint still. It's just kind of like I never smoked cigarettes. So it's like, it's kind of fun to smoke something.
Right.
That just kind of gives you that feeling. So I've had many days just kind of hanging out in my garden with my chickens running around and my dogs running around and just smoking a joint, just kind of feeling like, oh, you know, you get that
There's
lovely
no
peace.
feeling quite like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me about your bong.
So we have actually, I think it's called Illadelph is the name, and it's got a glass pinch in it. We have an ash catcher. It's pretty standard. I am kind of fanatical about bong cleanliness, so
Oh,
I do
thank you.
clean it pretty much every day.
Uh,
I'm
the,
so
the the wizard over there once tried to start a business where he was going to go to other people's houses and clean their paraphernalia for them, just because he loves
perfect.
doing
Yeah. I mean, and you're in Vermont. It's perfect. There's plenty of stoners in Vermont.
There's not plenty of anything in Vermont.
Maple syrup,
that.
maybe.
Like nobody lives here.
Yeah.
That is true.
Which is
Like,
amazing to me. I feel like you're going to get more people moving up because the rest of the world is like, I mean, even down here in Maryland, it's been 2 months since it rained. I feel like I live in a desert. So I'm ready to
well,
move.
and I'm one of the people that did that. I'm
Oh,
not
yeah.
from here, so I am one of the Yahoo Flatlanders
Oh, okay.
that have moved to Vermont. That's their affectionate name for us.
I was wondering what that term was.
Well, it really only applies to the ones that come up and try to change shit.
Ah,
Do not come. Which, by the way, for anybody listening, I support that theory. Don't come here and try and change shit. It's really
right.
nice the way it is. Leave it the fuck alone.
Just
So,
it's funny because I live in a place where I live in Texas, and everyone's mad that people are coming here and trying to change Texas. And I'm going to take the flip side from what Mick was just saying. Please come to Texas and try and change shit. Like, please
well, except
bring your California to Texas. I'm
they've
okay.
ruined Austin.
Now, what
So
do you hear about Texas legalization, though? What do you hear about? Or is there a push for rec?
So the thing is, even medical is is
Very limited.
barely legal
Yeah.
in Texas.
Yeah.
But so because of the hemp bill, like I can go down the street to I've got 5 smoke shops within like a quarter mile radius of me. They're on every street corner where I
Yeah.
can go in and buy
Delta 8,
Delta 8,
9,
Delta
yeah.
9, THCV,
THCA, yeah.
yeah,
THCA is real
and I mean
big.
that's what's in here, and it's the same thing, but it's
Yeah.
not It's so like so, which begs the question: why the fuck isn't it all legal, right? Like,
Money. That's why. Money.
sure, right?
Money. Literally, it's just money. I got into the industry so rosy-eyed and thinking it was all about health and it was all about helping people and all of that. And it's literally all about money. That's all.
But
And
wouldn't
it's
the
just it's
state?
heartbreaking to see it. Go ahead.
Would
Sorry.
No, I was gonna say, wouldn't there be more money if they just made like it, the real stuff
No, I
legal?
mean, I'm going to use Maryland where I live as, an example, but basically, you had to be a millionaire to get into the medical cannabis game in Maryland. I mean, the application for the licensing was over $1 million. So you have to be a millionaire to even get into the game. Once you get into that game, if you're a grow facility, it's $150,000 a year just for your license. Just for your license. Now, on top of that, you have to pay for lab testing, you have to pay for your employees, you have to pay for all this stuff. But why is it $150,000 a year to have a license? Like, that doesn't have
Question.
anything to do with safety. That doesn't have anything to do with keeping consumers safe. That doesn't have anything to do with anything except keeping rich people rich. And what's really sad about our commission here, and like I said, I can only speak to Maryland. The commission is basically made up of retired police officers. They've made their living for their entire life mainly putting people behind bars for cannabis. Now they are not only making a pension from police work, but they're also making outrageous salaries on top of that through the cannabis game. And you do find a lot of them that they make money off of cannabis. That's their livelihood, but they have very low regard for anyone who actually consumes. They don't personally consume, they make money off of it. And that's really unfortunate. I understand the thinking kind of, well, our regulatory body needs to be completely law enforcement. But also, I can't tell you how many times I would call the commission when I managed a dispensary to say, first of all, our regulations, you couldn't even get a copy of them. They were online, but it was like, if you printed it out, it was like 300 pages of regulations. So I went we opened the dispensary 2 days after we opened the dispensary, we get a surprise inspection. And these regulatory people come in and they're going through everything. And they go in the back and they pull out a single sheet of paper, which is called a manifest, that comes out of our file cabinet. And it's basically the details of a delivery that's come into the facility. And it's got weights, it's got lot numbers, it's got batch numbers. I mean, this piece of paper is completely detailed, everything you can know about the cannabis. If any single thing was off on that manifest, which they pulled our security footage and they compare the manifest against the security footage, and then they compare our inventory to make sure that's correct. If any single piece of that is off, even a number, even a letter, it's a $4,000 fine.
Oh my gosh.
So tell me how that helps keep anything safe. Because I'm sorry, but like one thing being misprinted on a manifest does not mean that a 10-year-old is picking up, a bag of weed off the street and going home with it. Like that is complete bullshit. That's horseshit. But the thing that was really frustrating too was we have all these regulations that we have to abide by. But when you call the commission and you say, okay, I'm on page 25, section C, this is written very vague and I can't really understand how to interpret it. Can you help me? It was always, oh, we'll call you back. What's your name? What's your number? And then click, and you never heard back from them. You could not get an answer out of anyone. The regulations in like a bound book form, if you wanted to buy them, you could. It was a $400 book to buy the regulations, which you were going to be held to this incredibly high standard on. So I'm like, right at that moment in the medical, I'm like, oh, wait, you're all liars. This isn't about safety. This isn't about health. This is about a money grab. And it's really disheartening to see across the country in every state that I'm working in. I mean, I'm working from California to North Dakota to Maine to Vermont. It's all some variation of that. And I really think Vermont, like I was speaking to the Wizard about this earlier, like their regulations are insane as well. But the Vermont kind of like feeling and the vibe up there is just kind of like, we're all in this together. Like we don't want to annoy our patients or our customers when they're not shopping with us. Like we're not going to text market. It's a lot more laid back. But like Michigan is a really hot market, but unfortunately it's only hot if you're an MSO or you're like a big deal grower. Like if you're an independent grower, the black market is just completely taken over. You can't make money there. So it's literally, and the MSOs typically like, God. So True Leaf, I don't know if you've heard of them.
I have.
Yes.
Yeah. So they're all throughout the entire United States. They're an MSO. They're one of the big guys. Something like, I think it's like a $4 billion they're worth or something like that. So they were hand in hand with the Florida legislature, actually writing the regulations for the state of Florida, which they wrote so that only MSOs can exist in Florida. Guess who the biggest MSO is in Florida? True Leaf.
True Leaf.
So yeah, it's kind of like it's out there and it's kind of like, oh, it's this hippie thing, this weed market, but also we want to make as much money as possible. And also the only people that should make money are people like us. That's all. So it's disheartening to see, equity, licensing, any kind of advancement, any kind of worker protection isn't there because that's not what their focus is. They can pay lip service to it all day long. It's just not what they're about.
Then in your opinion, like should a state like Texas, should we be even pushing for legalization or should we just deal with what we've got, which is, the THCVs and the, what's your take on that?
I mean, it's hard to say because I will say, Maryland started off as medical only, and I kind of started running a dispensary when it was medical only. It was hugely regulated. There was not even, we could only have as many people back in the dispensing area as there were bud tenders available. You had to have a 1-to-1 ratio. You could never have like 3 customers and 2 cashiers would not be okay. And now we've gone rec. And now the other day I went to a dispensary and I picked up a couple THC seltzers and I had a big bag with me. And the guy's like, oh, you can just put them in your bag. And I'm like, okay, things have changed because when I was working, it was like you had to put the label on, you had to put it in a bag, you had to staple the bag shut.
Yeah.
You have to sign on the receipt. I mean, it was so regulated. So as soon as rec came in, it's like we can legally grow 4 plants of our own. No one just grows 4 plants. Come on, get real.
Right.
But like, again, you know, my ex-husband's a police officer and he lives in Delaware where it's also legal. And he's just like, look, no one really cares about weed. Like we're
Right.
worried about everything else. Now you are in
Good.
Texas, so you got the Texas Rangers. So I don't know.
We
It
do.
definitely depends on where you
They got
are
such fancy
in
hats. I got to
Texas.
earn them.
Right. It depends where you are. Like Mick said, like in Austin, in my county, Travis County, weed is decriminalized.
Okay.
And I mean, I'm pretty sure that if I'm in downtown, that I could walk past a police officer smoking a joint, and they wouldn't turn their head. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna go try that, but like,
Try it now. Try it right now.
Yeah. All right. I'll see you
Take
guys.
the camera with you.
My
5
experience
minutes,
in
20
Austin
years.
was if to get busted for weed, you had to be being a huge dick.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they
You
were gonna
had
bust you for being a dick, and
to
then
be a
book you
dick,
for some weed
and
too.
then they
Right.
would bust you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, nobody cared. Now, drive 10 miles north to Wilco,
Right. Williamson County.
and
Not okay.
no.
Yeah, it blew my mind because when I managed the dispensary, we were so tightly regulated and we were so careful. You have to do you could not literally move product from one room to another room without entering it into the system, moving it from dispensing area to the vault, moving it from here to there. Everything was so tightly regulated. And then we had a patient that came in and he, I'm just going to say, I'm not going to name him, but imagine like an extra from Jersey Shore. That was about what this guy was like. Very nice, but just like that kind of look, you know, speech pattern, everything.
So it was someone from the Jersey Shore, is what
He
I'm
might have
understanding.
been.
All right.
And we are pretty close to it.
We'll talk
But
offline.
he came in and he was like talking, and then all of a sudden, casually mentioned, he was like, "Oh, I just flew back from Vegas and brought 10 pounds with me." And I'm like, "What? 10 pounds? Like a pound is going to smell up the entire, what are you talking about?"
Right.
And apparently he goes to Vegas regularly and gets these huge wrapped bales and puts them in his suitcase and takes them across it. I was like, what is going on? So I think there's sometimes like idiot luck where it's just like, if you're stupid enough to do it. I don't know.
But
But
just to be
it was
clear,
crazy because it's like you can't plug up all the leaks. So at least I wish these regulatory bodies would be a little bit more realistic about what you're working with. Like if you are actually worried about health and you're actually worried about safety, then put more health and safety protocols in with your people. Better educate your bud tenders and anybody that's customer facing and make sure they understand what the regulations are. They're not doing that. So you're showing your ass. You're showing it's not about safety. It's not about health. This is all about money. And this is how we can screw you.
that is so disheartening.
Yeah.
But also not at all surprising.
Yeah.
It's like,
sadly.
I learned when I was 22 and I joined the U.S. Air Force that I had always been like
your service, by the way.
Yeah, well, thank you. I did it just for you. No, but you know, every job I had ever had, I was like upset with how it was run. I was like, this is run like a complete and total shit show.
Yeah.
I can't wait to go to the military and like finally be a part of something that is run like and it was very quickly after I don't even think I was out of boot camp before I figured it all out that there's no such thing as adults. Like there's no one's in charge. We're just kids who have gotten older, but every bureaucracy is a total fucking train wreck. There is disorganized. It's yes.
Yeah.
So I'm not
11
surprised
years
you're
in
surprised.
public mental health.
Thank you for your service.
I know exactly of what you speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My experience in Vermont has been a little bit different, I have to say. And granted, I haven't dipped real deep, but like I've met several growers, female owned, a lovely couple, two people of color, and who literally it's a man and a wife running a marijuana farm.
Awesome.
Have a few employees. I went one of my favorite dispensaries just for differentness, owned by an actual witch in Bethel, Vermont, and it's just it was this tiny little cottage almost, And she's got a bunch of plants over here and this stuff. So clearly, you don't have to be a millionaire here.
That's
which,
awesome to
which
hear
I think
because,
is awesome.
yeah, we witches are the keeper of mystical plant knowledge. So give it back. Let the witches run the entire industry, quite honestly. Give it back to us.
You know,
So,
I'm just going to be controversial and say let the witches run the world.
okay. Yeah, definitely not the riches. The
No,
witches.
no, we've done that. That's
They
what we're
already run
doing
the
right
world.
now. Yes.
Yeah.
It's not going so great in my
Yeah. I mean, it's, it's no industry is perfect. Like we get that, we are the adults, sadly.
Yeah.
Like we have to take control of this. And I hear you because I am definitely an operational minded person. So every industry that I've gotten into, I'm like, why are we doing it like this? And why are we this and that and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And cannabis has just been, I mean, at the dispensary, when we went to go pay our licensing fee, we were still at the point that we couldn't have a bank account. So we had thousands and thousands of dollars every day walking in the door of the dispensary. We had a safe. Then we had to upgrade to a bigger safe because we literally physically could not fit all the cash into the safe to close it up. And then it was time to pay our licensing fee for the year, which is $42,000. We had it all in cash. And I was like, I'm not walking into the commission headquarters with a duffel bag.
Right.
$42,000. Like,
Come on.
I'm not doing that. And so the owner who, that's a whole nother story. He was an evil man, but he basically said, well, start going around and bring $3,500 or no, sorry, it was $2,500 at a time because at $3,000 you have to do paperwork. Bring $2,500 at a time to all these different post offices and get money orders. And then we'll slowly build it up to be $42,000. And I'm like, I'll never forget walking out with $2,500 in cash in my wallet and walking in and going, I think this is like technically exactly money laundering. And I have to do it to pay a regulatory fee to the state that I live in. I have to money launder. And I'm being told by my employer to do it. Like,
right.
It's just like, oh my God, like what is going on here?
Yeah.
So, and it was, I think
crazy.
once the bank started actually taking our money, I think it was like $3,500 a month for them just to hold your money for you. It's ludicrous. It's insane. And I think there's been more than enough precedent set on how profitable the cannabis business is. The abuses that happen within the cannabis industry, because it's kind of in this loosey-goosey area where it's like every state can decide how they're going to regulate it and what they're going to do. There was a very tragic worker death at a grow facility last year. She died from a massive allergic reaction to particles in the air and died, and her family is suing the grower. But she was basically put in that position because there isn't any kind of a union for cannabis workers and there isn't a good chain of command. I mean, I can't tell you how many cannabis industries like don't even have an HR person. There's no one there. Like if you have a workers complaint, and especially in Maryland and Delaware, because they're at will work states, if you complain about literally anything, they'll find a reason to fire you.
Right.
So it's, when you get there, it's like, there's no worker protection. What are you doing? Like it's because it was such like a niche industry. I feel like they thought that would fly. And increasingly workers are leaving the cannabis industry completely because they're like, there's no equity. I'm never going to get ahead. I was hired as a bud tender. I was told that one day I'd be an assistant manager. That's never going to happen. Green Thumb Industries is a great example. They are a multi-billion-dollar company. Managers at their stores make $16 an hour. Multi-billion-dollar company, and that's what they pay. It's disgusting.
This was supposed to be like the new gold rush, I thought. Like when cannabis became legalized. I was thinking, as I think were you, and as I believe most people were thinking, like this is going to be a chance for like the average person to just get in there and make money and start living the American dream. And then like everything else, they regulated the shit out of it too. And I'm not against regulation. I don't think that anyone here is against regulation per se, but they regulated it to such a way that no, you're going to work in it for slave wages, just like you can do at McDonald's or anywhere else.
Yeah.
And we're going to get rich up at the top and we're going to, trickle down economics, but no, we're trickle down is going to stay in the.
like I have to be on LinkedIn every day for work because I make a lot of connections through there. It is the most depressing place in the world if you are connected with a bunch of cannabis business owners. They blame everything on the bud tenders. It's always the bud tenders' fault. They never do anything wrong. They're incredibly misogynistic. They're incredibly classist. They're incredibly homophobic. And it's just all out
Ugh.
there. And they're like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? I got all this money. I got a big company behind me. So what are you going to do? And yeah, it's just like there'll be a female that makes a comment, or maybe a queer person makes a comment, and these men that have their company's name attached to their LinkedIn profile are just saying the most horrible, offensive things. And it's just kind of like, oh, well. So it's like, yeah, talk about getting your heart broken to go into an industry and think like, this is going to be the change. This is where it all
Yeah.
happens. And have these people at the top that control the entire game, who don't consume, who don't know anything about the plants, who don't care about patients. And they're the ones that get to, it's like, no.
Can't do it.
So I am a big believer. It's a mother plant. It is a female empowered plant. You're fucking with the wrong energy. Like that's going to come back around and bite you in the ass at some point.
I believe you. Can't those guys just go and work for like Budweiser?
I know.
Just get
literally
out of this
anywhere.
industry. Anywhere, any other industry. Yeah. Can't we just have this one nice thing?
Yeah, it's really, I mean, the difference between how cannabis is regulated versus how alcohol and tobacco is regulated, even though there's really no comparison between the three of them in terms of they're all considered vices. There's no, as far as I know, health application to alcohol. There's no health application to tobacco. There are many health applications to cannabis. And we can thank our good friend Henry Anslinger for throwing it under the bus with everything else. But that's another podcast.
Yeah, Mick's a big fan of his too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hell of a guy.
Yeah.
I will
I
admit
light a
to
joint
not
every
knowing
year on
much
the day he
about him,
died. So yeah.
I'm all for celebrating someone's death. So don't need to twist my arm. I'm sure that Mick has some more questions for you too, but I just wanted to ask you, so you've been talking about how every state has their own regulations, and as we've discussed, the federal government is not super awesome either. But if you had to pick, do you think that it's right to keep it up to the states, or do you think that there should be federal oversight?
I think there needs to be federal oversight where they say, this is how it is, the end. And I think there needs to be a lot of common sense involved in that, which frankly, I don't have a lot of faith in our government to kind of pull that into the wheel of thinking.
Sure.
Just like we see with, abortion, gay rights, everything like that, cannabis has become this big like buzzword where it's like, I can use it to get votes, or I can use it to like get, votes against this other person who's for this.
Right.
So it's unfortunate that cannabis has been pulled into that just because there are so many applications, and it's absolutely not a cure-all. And I get really pissed off when people are like, oh, it cures everything. Just get rid of that and get weed. It's like, no, some people need mental, they need psychological medication. They need whatever they need. Cannabis is not going to cure everything.
Right.
But you can't deny that there are, healing aspects of it, and there are therapeutic applications for it.
Yeah.
And there, for instance, there was a patient that used to come into the dispensary who had become, he had an incident with a gun where a bullet went in here. It took out both of his eyes, lodged in his brain, left him with permanent brain damage, blinded him, obviously. And his parents were both older. They were like early 60s. They just retired. They were like kind of out of it. Well, he had this accident. And afterwards, his mom was like, we found out afterwards he has anxiety and he's afraid of the dark. Now all he sees is dark. I had to go back to work to take care of him. They found that cannabis was the only thing that actually like put him into a place where he was like calm and he wasn't having panic attacks. He could actually sleep. This poor mother, had just retired. Her husband had just retired. They both had to go back to work to support their son. Why should she have to pay full price for cannabis when she comes into a dispensary to get it for her son? Like the only reason that exists, she was a medical cannabis patient taking care of her son. Like she got no kind of break on price. She was paying an outrageous amount. I knew she was paying, 100% markup on the product that we brought in. It was just like, why isn't this industry that has so much healing potential, why isn't it coming for those people and saying, we're going to establish compassionate care funds? That was up to us at the dispensary level. We started a compassionate care fund where when people tipped us, we would put it in a jar and we would keep it. And then if someone came in and they couldn't afford their medicine, we would help them. Why isn't that done on a state level? If all these states are so invested in regulation, why aren't they helping their people? Why aren't they helping them heal? So I say the states need to be taken completely out of it. The federal government needs to say this is about as regulated as lettuce and tomatoes and any produce that you would take into your body whatsoever. Because quite frankly, they haven't put in the homework to show if there are any adverse effects, really. I mean, if you look at the studies that are done that are highly critical of cannabis, they're all funded by alcohol, tobacco, or pharmaceutical companies.
Right.
Why are we letting them look at it? Why don't we have any kind of a neutral third party that's coming in that's actually doing testing? That's really only coming out of Israel at this point. And as they're now in this major upheaval, like we're not getting that much information. So we don't have any new studies going on. And I think there are it's two colleges in the US that are approved to study cannabis. But even that, I mean, the oversight on that and the amount of rigmarole they have to go through to procure product, to go through testing and everything. Like, you don't do that for any other plant. Why are you doing it for this plant? It's baloney. So I say take away the state regulations. If we do it from like a federal standpoint, I do want to see some kind of like a testing lab that's established nationally where anyone can bring their weed in and flat rate, 25, 30, $50. You can have a sample of your batch tested, and you can get a readout of terpenes and cannabinoids and the potency, and if it has mold or, all the rest of that, because we want to keep it safe. So that's kind of my ideal world. I really do think that this is something that we should be able to have farmers markets. We should be able to have backyard sellers. Absolutely. Why wouldn't we? And if you have a testing lab to bring it to have it tested and make sure that what you're going to consume is safe, boom, the end. And not everyone's a backyard grower, and some people are going to want to go to a dispensary. They don't want to buy from a farmer's market. So it's not going to put all of these guys out of business.
That's how eggs work.
Yeah.
A lot of people go to the grocery store and buy eggs.
Yeah.
And some people go to the farmer's market and get eggs.
I go to my backyard to get eggs, but
I was going to say.
Again, Vermont is lovely.
Yeah.
We can drive down any road.
Yeah. I keep thinking either Vermont or British Columbia. I could be.
There's a stand on the side of the road with eggs and an ice chest where you put the money.
Nice.
You take the eggs, you put the money, you leave. There's no people.
Yep. And we could apply that same logic to cannabis to eggs.
We could.
How do you know that those eggs are safe? How do you know they're going to be cooked correctly? How do you know this? How do you know that? You don't know any of that. You could get much sicker from eating a bad egg than you ever could from smoking weed that hasn't been tested. Yet the egg is not regulated. Cannabis is.
I've smoked so much weed that wasn't tested.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
One story I forgot to mention when you asked about weed in Texas. I feel like I should tell this story. So I've been to an emergency room twice for gastrointestinal purposes in the past 5 years. One time it was because I needed my appendix out. It was about to rupture. The next time was because I had salmonella poisoning. Wouldn't recommend either of those things, by the way. But both times that I went to the emergency room, I was told, I went to the emergency room during the COVID-19 pandemic. I went in. I said, I have really horrible stomach pains. I'm pretty sure it's my appendix. And they said, do you smoke weed? And I said, yes. And they said, it's not your appendix. You're experiencing, I don't even care what there's some syndrome that they call it. So it's this syndrome because of marijuana use. We're seeing it a lot. Said, okay.
Paramesis gravidum.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, cool, but you're still gonna see me anyways. Yeah, of course it was my appendix that time. My salmonella poisoning was last month, and I went back, same emergency room, and they were like, oh, like I thought it was my gallbladder because I'm a bit of a hypochondriac. So I was like, it was
what
my
else?
appendix before. This time it's my gallbladder. And they were like, it's not your gallbladder. You have whatever you guys just said. And I was like, no, I don't. I didn't have that then. I don't have that now. And yeah, salmonella. So, but yeah, so that's where we are in Texas, I guess. Is if you have a belly ache, they just want to tell you that it's because of weed. So
yeah, and it's funny too because the medical field is so fickle about weed. Because when I was in the hospital recovering from brain surgery, I had a nurse that came by and her and I started talking, and I mentioned work, and She said, well, where do you work? And I mentioned I was working in the cannabis space. And she literally, like a cartoon, she was like, she like went over and closed the door and she was like, okay, I have so many questions for you. Like, what? So I start telling her, I'm like, well, are you interested in CBD? Are you interested in THC? Like, what's going on? And she was like, well, I just don't even know. Like, where should I start with CBD? So I'm sitting there like giving her a lesson. She's like, I said, do they not cover any of this in medical school? Like, they don't cover any of anything to do with cannabis whatsoever. And she said, all they ever tell us is if a patient comes in and says that they've consumed cannabis, always assume that that's the reason for whatever symptoms they're experiencing. So it is per medical schools, which is so fucking irresponsible. No, get your fucking knowledge on. Like, watch a podcast, read a book. Like, what are you doing? But it was funny because she spread the word to my other nurses. And the next day I have another nurse come in and she's like, are you the cannabis girl? Okay, I have some questions. But it was like, what is going on? And she said, I have to make sure that no doctor hears this because if they hear it, they're going to get mad. Like, why would a doctor be mad? Like, they're not going to get mad if I go in and I'm like, I'm taking a ginkgo biloba supplement. Like, they're not going to be mad about that. Why are they mad about cannabis? It's kind of like it could replace a lot of the shit that they end up doling out for all these kickbacks.
Right.
Like that.
And I am someone who is a chronic pain sufferer, who has been prescribed opioids, and who, even if my pain was so bad that I decided I needed the opioids again, which I'm not going to do, mind you, they wouldn't give them to me because I use cannabis. Because we'll give you the drugs that absolutely are killing people at a level that I think even if I told my 12-year-old son, if I said opioid, what word comes next? He'd say epidemic. We all, you can't even say opioid without the word epidemic coming into your head. Yep. But so we'll give you those, but we won't give you those if you're using weed.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, Texas and Pennsylvania is a lot the same as you guys are because they are medical only and it's incredibly tightly regulated. And I went there on a vacation with my girls a couple of years ago, and we had to buy Delta 8 gummies because I was like, I need something to help me sleep. But it was just hysterical because it's Pennsylvania. I was driving down the road. I'm like, I could literally buy an AK-47 from a roadside stand and be fine. But if I lit up a joint, I would be swarmed by the SWAT team. Like, what is going on? It's so bizarre. Right. But it was like in that state, like you said, with the Delta 8 and the Delta 9, those are slid in under the hemp bill. You can still get those. So, and thank God for the like creative person that kind of slid that into the farm bill.
I know.
Like, oh.
No.
Because it really allows people in these highly regulated states to have at least some way to access it. Now with Delta 8 or Delta 9, you're not getting, the entourage effect. You're not getting all the supportive terpenes or cannabinoids. So if you're going to allow cannabis, any kind of mind-altering cannabis in any state, let the people have their terpenes.
And that's what I hate about the D8 and D9 stuff is it made it so much harder to find a store that would sell you good or any CBD flower.
Yep.
Like, well, we have all this. Like, I just want some CBD flower.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a pre-roll.
The people that I know down here, it's so funny too, because everybody's growing their plants, but almost everyone has at least one or two plants that they just grow for CBD because it's the same thing down here. And especially with my brain tumor recovery and all that, I do a 1-to-1 THC and CBD RSO every night, but I do love, they sometimes have one that's like THC, CBD, and CBN, which is amazing for sleeping. And it's also the terpene profile on it is gorgeous. Like, I love that. And we're still supposed to be a medical state. I'm still supposed to have access to things that I can use in a medical context. I cannot because it is absolute horseshit that it was ever seen as medical. It was always seen as a money grab. They have moved completely into, we're right next to Delaware, who's been approved for rec, but they don't have rec currently. So everyone drives into Maryland. So everything that the rec patients or the rec customers like, that's what they stock up on. They're not stocking up on anything for medical patients anymore. So it's like, why am I paying for this card every year? Right. I mean, it does mean that I don't have to pay taxes on my medicine, but at the same time, it's just like, it's ridiculous. It's such a sham.
And are they testing, are they doing real tests on cannabis is in the health industry right now?
In the health industry, I don't think as much. Like I said, I just think it's one of those things. We're really seeing a weird time in the medical industry all over the place, in my opinion. The rise of Ozempic and semaglutides and all of these are really being pushed really hard. They have only been around for like a minute. We don't understand the long-term effects of these, and they're so easy to get to. It's just like, if they're not really researching that, I doubt that they're putting that much research into cannabis, something that they can't make money on and which will actually take money away from it. That's why we're not getting any research. And hopefully Israel is able to step up their research again and give us some of that. Hopefully we're able to step up the research that happens in the US. But that's what's so frustrating. We might have applications that could do away with so much. And Rick Simpson, I mean, is just such a trailblazer and one of my icons, because he purposely, when he created the oil, he didn't patent it. He could have patented it and become a millionaire. He was like, no, here you go. Here's how to make it. This is what's out there. So I just think that's at the heart of what cannabis should be. When you have, any kind of a science or studies or anything behind it, it should be for the greater good of helping people heal. That's what we're supposed to be doing here.
It looks like I can buy RSO oil in Texas.
Yep. So do they have a THC cap on what they can sell? Because I know some medical states, like I believe in Pennsylvania, you can't sell anything, I think it's above 20% THC.
That's a good question.
Just because RSO is usually RSO here, I mean, it tests at like 87% THC, but I literally take it's the size of a grain of rice is how big the serving size is. It's real tiny. And it knocks you out.
Yeah.
It's incredibly strong.
That sounds wonderful. But yeah, I'm looking at a company right now, Texas Original, medical grade RSO tincture.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's a tincture though? It's not the oil.
It's a tincture.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Is that what the legal loophole is there?
I think they probably have some kind of creative wording around. I mean, this is another thing, like they're probably thinking like, oh, RSO, someone could smoke that, even though you can't smoke that. You're not supposed to smoke that. It's just an oral application. But to them, they're like, somebody could smoke that. So let's not do an oil, let's do a tincture, because they consider that more dosage. But that's what also cracks me up. It's like the people that are writing this don't know that if you take any kind of oral application of cannabis that goes down through your digestive system, it hits you 10 times as hard as smoking something. Something you absorb, I think it's like 16% of the potency. If you ingest anything, it's hitting all the THC receptors all throughout your entire system for an extended period of time. So I can't tell you how many like 50, 60, 70-year-olds are like, oh, I want to try something, but I just want to eat it. And I'm like, okay, let's have a little conversation first.
Right.
You will be on your couch staring at the wall if you're not careful here. So
yeah,
that's a ride you don't get off for a while.
Yeah. When I worked at the dispensary, it was with anybody that was starting, and I'll say the same to anybody starting, you always want to make sure that you have a high grade CBD tincture on hand. CBD does downregulate THC. So if you ever get to a point that you're too intoxicated, you can take CBD. What it does is it basically starts shutting down your endocannabinoid receptors. It stops uptaking THC. You start drinking water, it passes out of your system, and you're good.
I have seen a product, maybe we've even talked about it, Mick, I forget, that's like a spray. It's a CBD spray that supposedly if you're too high, you can spray it and it will like mellow you. Do you believe that in the spray form that it works?
It would be more about the testing profile of it. So CBD, if it's just pure CBD, if there's no THC present, your body actually it's not bioavailable to your body. You can't actually absorb it. So the one that I really liked, which I cannot find around here at all anymore, if anybody can find this and send this to me, thank you, was Mary's Medicinal. It was called The Remedy. And it was a 10-to-1 CBD tincture, 10 parts CBD to 1 part THC. I took it every single morning and I loved it. It was just wonderful because people aren't really educated at all around cannabis, but especially around how important CBD is to have in your daily routine. It actually helps regulate your endocannabinoid system so you don't get to the point that you have to take a tolerance break to actually be able to feel the effects of THC anymore. You still have to take a tolerance break once in a while, or it's a good idea to, just to let everything calm down. But especially, CBD is kind of completely overlooked and there's not really a lot of education out there. So that's part of my advocacy, is just talking about it until people ask me to stop.
We're doing the same thing here.
Yeah.
And I have a bag of the Remedy strain
Oh
right
yeah.
over here to my left.
Oh my gosh, I'm
It,
so jealous. Yeah,
it's
I
my
love
favorite.
that strain. Yeah, that and the
Oh, we should
Charlotte's
talk.
Web we haven't really been able to find around here either.
No, I haven't seen that in forever.
Yeah.
Uh,
Again, in the golden days, the early days of the medical market, we had so many beautiful CBD products. We had the transdermal patches, which were like always good. If you came up from the gym and you had a sore muscle, you could put a transdermal patch on and it really helped. Yeah, and that's great.
They don't
we
have
got
those anymore.
Mary's Medicinal in Colorado
Yes.
when I
Yeah.
was there.
Yeah. They are, I believe, I'm trying to think of who they're owned by one of the big MSOs now. They got bought out, but I can't remember which one. Maybe Green Thumb.
They were good stuff.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
no, I Tweedle Farms. I don't know if you've looked into them.
I actually have heard of them. Are they hemp only or are they
Yes,
THC as well? Okay, they're
hemp
hemp only.
only. Well, under 0.3%
Yeah,
THC. Uh, but they do an amazing number of strains. They do a lot of terpene testing. Uh, very much geared towards a medicinal use, while
nice.
at the same time, so good,
Beautiful.
tasty. Oh, it's
Yeah, people
just
really, I mean,
wonderful.
they kind of think of CBD as like, it's CBD, it's not really going to get me high. But like, there's
Right.
so many beautiful CBD strains that you just open it up and the bag smells like flowers and you've got all these amazing terpenes. And like, you don't understand because we're so used to this, especially if you've been drinking before. You drink and then you drink a second drink and then it hits you like a sledgehammer to the head and like you're feeling it.
Yeah.
CBD is much more gradual. I always tell people to kind of think of it like a multivitamin. The first time you take a multivitamin, you're not really going to feel anything.
Mm.
But if you keep taking it consistently, you're going to be like, oh, I feel like my back isn't so achy or like my skin's glowing or whatever.
Yeah.
CBD is kind of in that same area a little bit where it's like it's a good thing that you should be taking regularly because it is really good for you, but don't expect to like smoke it or whatever and feel this head rush like you would get with THC. It's going to be much more like kind of like a body high kind of thing where all
I
of a sudden like
feel
your body
better.
feels good. Yeah.
I feel better. My mind feels better.
Yeah. 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 And I always
And
love a good one-to-one too. Like any kind of a concentrate that's one part to one part. I love those for
which is why flour is so nice because I
yeah.
can take a little of this and take a little of this and make my own beverage.
Now I have to ask you about your mug that you smoke out of though. When you drink out of it, doesn't that ash come out?
No, it's the way it's built because it's on the front. So I'm drinking and the bowl is kind of
And it
deep.
kind of stays
And so
in.
that's never a problem.
Very cool. I love that mug. Really
Oh,
cool.
it's awesome. I
That's
found a
awesome.
lady on Etsy that made them and
Yes.
she
It's a
didn't
small business
do the elder sign, but I
too.
asked her and she went, sure, that sounds like fun.
Okay.
Artists are so cool.
They are. I'm married to an artist. So yeah.
A
But no, like
very good
literally,
artist,
this is
by the
my
way.
life. This is weed, and this is CBD.
Oh, nice.
So
Very cool.
throughout the day, I just go back and forth.
Yeah,
I
I'd
was
like to
telling I was just telling Mick that we have to go down to Delaware to get tattoos from your artist husband at some
yeah,
point.
he's in Maryland, actually.
Maryland.
But yeah, yeah. We're
Yeah.
like 5 minutes from the border of Delaware. The girls actually go to school in Delaware. So yeah. But we actually, I'm happy that we're in Maryland because Maryland has an amazing medical market and recreational market, despite our lack of CBD. And Delaware has passed rec, but they're not going to actually put it into practice until I believe March of 2025, which is very odd to me because you're bordered on one side by New Jersey, which is rec, and the other side by Maryland, who is also rec.
Right.
I can
Um,
beat you.
it's
New
like,
Hampshire will not legalize. They've got
yeah, yeah,
Maine, Mass, and Vermont.
Well, because
and
we know what's up with
Alabama
New
too.
Hampshire.
Yeah. Alabama technically has medical weed approved. They have no dispensaries in the state. So it's like, why did you even bother? Like,
Right.
what are you doing here? So yeah, they still haven't written their regulatory language, but we're also seeing it in New York and New Jersey. They went rec and now they're kind of going back and rewriting their regulatory language, which sucks for all the operators because they started off and started selling and now have to go back and go, okay, well, we can't do this. And now we have to change how we do this. It's like, this is why the states need to be cut out of the picture. Just do it federal.
I'm with you. I think I had no horse in the game at all, and then I wanted to see what you had to say about it. But now, yeah, I'm all for the federal government taking over.
Yeah, it's like I think the one time I've actually advocated for the federal government. I just I'm not even advocating for them. I just want them to step in and be like, by the way,
Yeah,
you can't do this anymore. The end. Like
no,
this is like tomatoes and eggs.
it sounds like way too much of a shit show.
Yeah, I mean, they can't even regulate it at the state level with they're not going to be able to regulate it at the federal level. It just all needs to be decriminalized. It needs to be taken completely off the schedule substance list. It's just ridiculous. Like you've had enough of this game.
I would also like to see everybody who is in prison for a marijuana usage crime, not the
Absolutely.
dealers and the distributors, but anyone who is in prison for smoking weed needs to be let go and given a truck full of money.
Yeah.
That's just
Yeah.
And if you were arrested for selling weed, you should be let go and given a job
In
selling
the
weed
legal industry.
right.
Yes, exactly.
because
That's
you
fair.
know what you're doing.
Well,
Exactly.
also, if the
You
cops
may
get
not
to
have.
come in and make money off of it, so do the people that actually ran the industry, like back at the beginning. Like they get a piece of it too. And there's a dispensary, I think they're in, I want to say Missouri, and they're literally called Police and Thieves. And it's because it's cops that were, busting people, and then the people that were legacy growers that came together and formed an industry, and it's called Police and Thieves.
That's pretty awesome.
So,
That's
yeah,
50% awesome.
yeah,
Yeah, right.
exactly.
All right. Well, we are at our usual time. So figure let's remind everybody to change your bong water. We are horrible at signing off. I do want to say that next week, are we doing a show next week?
We are doing a show next week.
Okay, it's election night, so I wasn't sure. Yeah, we're gonna do a show next week. Offer a little safe haven for anyone who would rather just get high than stare at the results for an hour. Because as soon as that hour is up, I'm going to be getting more high and staring at the results until 4 o'clock in the morning, or whenever I pass out. And the week after that, we are gonna do something fun. We are gonna revisit stoner classic cinema. What are we watching again? Remind me.
Half baked.
Half Baked. We're
You
gonna watch
chose
Half
it.
Baked. I did choose it. We're gonna watch Half Baked, and we're gonna break that down. Lydia, you're totally invited back whenever you want. So
Thank
keep
you.
your
This has been
Tuesdays
Yeah,
are
really
we would
open.
love to
fun.
have you again.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank you so much. This has been really fun.
awesome. I'm glad that you had fun. And yeah, as long as we can remember our login info, we will be back next week. Uh, Mick, say goodnight.
And I don't know how to end this, so I'm just going to say rock on, everybody. Good night, Lydia.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.